People who had an affair behind their partner's back, what's the dirtiest truth you're still hiding? This happened 2 years ago. I had been with my girlfriend for 6 years at the time. She was the only girl I'd ever done with, and I was 23. She began working at a JCPenney while we were both in college, senior year, and became friends with another girl who worked there, named Marissa. She had just turned 19. The first time Marissa came over, I hung out with them, and the tension between Marissa and me was undeniable. Eventually, we exchanged numbers and started texting. After a few days, I admitted that I was extremely attracted to her, and she said she felt the same. Around the same time, one night, my girlfriend and I were watching Korn together, and she pulled up a video of an MFF 3 score. I asked if she would ever consider trying something like that, and she said, if the right girl came along, maybe. The very next day, I got a call from my girlfriend at work. She told me that Marissa wanted to have a 3 score with us. October 1st rolls around, and the girls work out a plan. We're going to have a Halloween party at our place. Marissa is going to stay the night, and the 3 of us would do it after the party. As the month went on, Marissa kept hanging out at our place, staying the night. My girlfriend started to suspect I liked her and began stressing about the 3 score. Around October 15th, Marissa and I were certain my girlfriend wasn't going to participate and we wouldn't be able to do it together with her. The next day, we made plans to hang out. My girlfriend had no car, so in the morning, when I left to drive her to work, I pretended to lock the door. By the time I returned, Marissa was there, all bare. This scenario repeated itself for 2 straight weeks, 10 hours a day, every day. After our all-day encounters, Marissa would leave when I went to pick up my girlfriend, then come back after we returned and stay the night at our place. My girlfriend knew something was going on, but she had no idea to what extent. She started going crazy with jealousy, and I began to realize my girlfriend wasn't the person I wanted to spend my life with. I felt like I had wasted my youth staying with just one person. On October 29th, I broke up with her. I've never seen anyone so devastated, and I felt like the biggest piece of shit. The next day, October 30th, Marissa came over for another all-day encounter. As I was pulling off the last piece of clothing she was wearing, she got a call from her mom, who had just found out she had been skipping school and work to come be with me. She ran out of my place, dressing herself, and I never saw her again. What followed was about a year of the most emotional pain I've ever endured. I learned that life is short and blissful. Moments are fleeting, so you take them when and how you can. Ultimately, I'm grateful for that experience. It was a major fork in the road, and while the morality of it was questionable, going through it made me a better person. Only 2 people know the full story of what happened. Now, I'm leaving it with you, Reddit. Story 2. I had been married for 5 years. About 4 years ago, we met on a message board and immediately hit it off. She had a great personality and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me, which I really appreciated. It was nice to be noticed for my personality or other aspects of myself beyond just my looks. I'm not bad looking, and I usually get women's attention because of that, but once they realize I'm a bit of a dork or a nerd, the interest tends to fade. I guess I'm not the muscle-bound club-goer I might appear to be, but I digress. At first, we talked practically every other day, sometimes a few times a week. She was smart, funny, and could hold a conversation really well. She also listened when I talked about the problems in my marriage and offered advice, all of it seeming completely innocent. I don't know when it happened, but I can say I fell for her before I knew what she looked like. When she finally sent me a picture of herself, I was blown away by her beauty. Short, with long curly black hair, pale skin, almond-shaped eyes, and full lips. I thought I was the luckiest man alive. By that point, my marriage was already in the gutter. My wife had moved out and I hadn't spoken to her in a few weeks. I decided it would be best to get divorced because nothing was improving. We never actually divorced, and I honestly can't tell you why. At first it was because it was too expensive, but now that we're both financially stable, it has only come up once, about a couple of months ago. Back to the story. The catfish and I were fully committed to a long-distance relationship. We would watch television shows together over the phone, and as childish or strange as it may sound, we even slept on the phone together. The sound of each other's breathing helped us fall asleep, and it was just another way of feeling connected. She would occasionally send pictures, and I would send mine as well. Sometimes I asked for a specific kind of picture, like one of her wearing a hat, but she always had an excuse. After about a year of this, I started to question why. Why won't you send me the pictures I ask for? Why won't you video chat with me? And so on. I kept asking questions like that, I guess to throw me off the trail or to appease me. She eventually compensated by giving me her actual address. She lived about 8 hours away from me. She gave it to me with the strict promise that I wouldn't go see her until she was ready because of some emotional weird stuff she claimed to be dealing with. So, for another year, I obliged. We kept up the regular long-distance relationship routine, phone banging, watching movies together, staying on the phone all night. Then one day, I had the brilliant idea to go visit her anyway, and I did. I drove 8 hours, from sundown to sunup, in a car I shouldn't have been driving around the block, let alone across the state. I made it to her front door and knocked. No answer. I knocked a few more times, still nothing. So I thought, screw it, and decided to get a hotel and get some rest. When I got back to my car, my phone rang. It was her. She didn't know I was there, but she kind of did. Good morning. What's up? Blah, blah, blah. I answered, and she paused. Then she asked a question. I answered again, and she paused once more. Finally, she said, wait, where are you? I told her, and she completely freaked out over the phone. I thought I had done something horrible, jumped in my car, and was about to drive off when she called back. We talked, and I convinced her to meet me somewhere. I chose a local bookstore, considering we both loved reading, so it felt fitting. I waited for about an hour and then got a call from her. She said, I'm so scared and excited. I told her I felt the same and ended it with, I can't wait to see you. I hope you don't think I look weird in person. I wonder if you will. Then she said, what if I did look different? I replied, huh? What do you mean? Like you gained some weight? I don't give a shit. I already told you. She had a condition that required medication, and one of the side effects was weight gain. She said, no, just like a different person? Just then, I heard her voice from behind me echoing those words. I turned around, and there she was. This middle-aged woman, overweight and about 5 inches taller than I was, which is impressive considering I'm around 6'2". I froze. I didn't know what to do or say. She was a completely different person. She had lied about everything, from her job to her looks, to her age, to her frigging hair color. Mentally, I was breaking down. Emotionally, I was ripping apart. I stood there for what felt like forever. And then, out of nowhere, I hugged her. I hugged her tight and close, and she started apologizing. I still didn't say anything. She kept telling me how handsome I was and how happy she was to see me in person, and I just kept staring, trying to find the girl I had grown so attached to over the past 2 years. I think she saw it on my face because she told me she understood what might be going through my head and that she wouldn't take offense if I ran away. I didn't. Her voice was the same, still the soothing lullaby I had fallen asleep to for the past 700 nights. I invited her to the movies. Thor was playing, and by then, my mind was gone, like it had shut down completely. I had no thoughts. I couldn't focus on shit anymore. She must have seen it because a few minutes later she excused herself to the restroom. Not long after, I got a phone call. It was her. She said, this is what you're used to, and this is... Then she started apologizing again. I got up and went outside and found her sitting on a bench. I sat down with her and finally told her how betrayed I felt. I had given her every bit of me, which was frigging amazing, considering I'm a pretty introverted person and my mind just couldn't process what was happening. We parted ways, and I drove home in a daze. We talked a few times after that. She said the pictures she had sent me were of her obnoxious cousin. We stopped talking pretty quickly after that. I was pissed, angry at myself for being a piece of shit to my wife. Like, why couldn't I make the connection with my wife that I made with this woman? Yeah, my wife was crazy and beautiful, but why was it so easy to connect with a stranger? It screwed me up for a while. Still single to this day. Karma's been screwing me over ever since when it comes to women, and I deserve it. Story 3. Well, that's me. I was with an insanely hot, caring, and sweet girl for a few months. There were big differences between us, mainly our life aspirations. She wasn't educated nor particularly smart, and I had just finished university and started working as a teacher. After about 7 months, she started acting erratically, completely ignoring me and turning into a complete bish. I told her to confess if there was another guy, and I'd understand and leave, but she said that wasn't the issue. I didn't really trust her. She was driving me crazy every single day, and that's when I decided to be a huge jerk and meet her just to bang until I found someone else. I know it was a shitty and immature idea, but I was emotionally drained, angry, and wanted it to be my revenge. I started seeing my student 3 years younger. She turned out to be fantastic. After about 2 weeks, I broke up with the first girl, who, of course, told me she had been seeing a guy for about 2 months. I'm happy now and don't regret anything. Perhaps I should, but I don't. Story 4. My fiancée was the first girl I really did a lot of things with. We grew together through a lot, and it made me realize that physical intimacy felt incredibly good. Something I hadn't been very interested in until I got closer to it. We were pretty young, and after being together for years, I had grown accustomed to a certain level of togetherness and attention. Eventually, she decided she wanted to put us on hold so she could focus more on her life. Looking back now, I feel that was totally reasonable. But back then I thought, why can't she do both? I did both for us. The lack of intimacy, combined with my intense desire, led me to make some bad decisions. There was a friend of mine who had deep feelings for me, and she kept trying to get closer, even though she knew I was in a relationship. After a long time of this, a situation arose. I had gotten into a fight with my girlfriend and was feeling down. I was extremely in mood. We hadn't done anything in what felt like forever, and this girl kept pushing. At that point, I couldn't control myself. I called her and finally accepted her offer. When I got together with her, it wasn't the same as being with my girlfriend. With my girlfriend, it felt like heaven. You feel loved. You feel the passion of being with the person you care about. You cuddle afterward, play with their body, and hold them close. But this new girl was different. It was purely physical. I had said yes to her for one reason. I needed to get laid. That became obvious after I climaxed. As some might know, guys reach that point faster than girls. After that, I just couldn't keep going. I no longer felt the desire for intimacy, and suddenly she looked different to me. I no longer wanted to be there. Guilt hit me hard. I knew I had done something wrong. I apologized, told her I just didn't want to continue, and took her home. I learned how animal-like humans can be. I used to think cheaters always made very clear, deliberate choices to cheat. I've learned it's not always that simple. Sometimes, people just end up in bad situations. It can happen to a lot of people. I can empathize more with those who have cheated, and I get angry when people say things like, "Oh, cheaters never change. Once a cheater, always a cheater," or "Don't give that person a second chance." I understand why those feelings exist. People have probably been hurt badly, but I also believe some people can genuinely change. I guess what I'm saying is I can now see why cheating happens. And for the curious, no, I never told my fiance. We've talked about a lot of things, and early on we decided that if either of us ever cheated, we wouldn't tell the other. Ignorance is bliss. We love each other very much. That's why she's my fiance. We've been together for over 5 years now. She says she couldn't live without me, and if she ever had to choose between staying or leaving, it would eat her up. So I chose never to tell her. I just try to give her the best life possible, knowing I can never truly go back. I focus on moving on from the event and avoiding situations where something like that could ever happen again. Story 5. Never had an affair really, but several years into our marriage we had a 3 score, and since then we've become pretty open about allowing outside fun. There is absolute honesty between my wife and me. There are no secrets, very little fighting, and a healthy dose of the reality that people will find other people attractive. Crushes will happen, and they're usually nothing more than short-term infatuations that could never replace what our long-term relationship has built. To some degree, we just allow those things to run their course. At the end of the day, we always come home to each other. People think this is terrible and that it destroys something, but it has a lot of benefits. We don't take each other for granted based on the assumption of monogamy like many people do. We try harder to stay fit. We complement each other more. We genuinely notice the amazing things about one another in the face of what some might call greener grass. That greener grass is usually just a tiny patch compared to the lush yard we've created together. This requires a lot of honesty. It requires clearly defined boundaries that are thoroughly discussed. It requires STD tests for any other partners if things actually go that far. The people who say it's a terrible relationship don't know us or how happy we are. They've probably been in one monogamous relationship after another in the time we've been together. About 10 years. People get bored and often move on, or meet someone new once they're past the honeymoon phase with their current partner, and then assume that's kismet or something. They hop from one relationship to the next trying to fix something that isn't broken, all while chasing that initial thrill of a new relationship. Sure, it's probably not for everyone, but keep in mind, my wife used to be the type who thought corn was cheating. Getting past insecurities on both sides really reduces jealousy. If you aren't actually afraid your spouse will leave for something better based on insecurities about yourself, it works really well. You can have all the fun you want and still come home to a deeply committed relationship at the end of the day. Story 6. I wasn't the one who cheated, but last October, a girl I worked with and I started seeing each other. She had a boyfriend the entire time. I can in no way take the moral high ground. I began to fall for her, and despite my friends and my own common sense telling me it was a bad idea, we continued seeing each other. Months passed, and we fell in love. Only recently has it ended. Over the last 2 or 3 months, it slowly became nothing. Throughout the relationship, she kept saying she'd leave him, and like a gullible idiot, I believed her. Her reason for not ending it yet was that she needed his help to pass university. I wasn't happy with this, but I continued anyway because I genuinely loved her. Skip to her exams. We barely see each other because she didn't want any distractions. We drift apart, much to my dismay. After she graduates, we discuss her ending it with her boyfriend, and she tells me the date, July 2nd, the day after her graduation. But as we drift further apart, they're still together. At the start of September, she goes to London to train for her new job, and I see a picture of the two of them together. My moment of clarity didn't come soon enough. I realize it's really over, finally. In a way, I'm glad. Hurt, but glad. I can't really complain. I was as unjust as she was in the entire situation. Story 7. There's always something to learn. I was the other guy, a girl I met on the first day at a new job, and I hit it off instantly. For a couple of months, we flirted like crazy. She had a boyfriend, and she would show me bruises he supposedly gave her and talk endlessly about how bad their relationship was. They even lived together. One night, we ended up closing together and made out just to see what it was like. I thought I was showing her what a real man could be, but I think to her I was just a toy. She kept saying she was about to leave her boyfriend, and we would do everything except banging. Neither of us went that far, but in reality, she had no plans to leave him. She was one of those girls who liked it rough, liked to be controlled, and liked to have her cake and eat it too. I just fell for it. I ended it after an episode where she repeated a series of statements almost exactly the same as before, trying to get me to stay, about her bad relationship and how she was going to leave him. I realized I was being played, so I ended it. I easily convinced myself I was doing something good, when in fact, I was taking part in something very bad, and in the end, my conscience won out. Story 8. I was the one who got cheated on. We'd been having a lot of issues in our marriage, starting with her decision that she no longer wanted to start a family. She came home from work one day and told me that, then left to stay at a friend's house. This had never been discussed before, and we weren't under any pressure to start a family anytime soon. A few days later, she came back and we tried working on things, but nothing improved over the following months. Eventually, she told me she needed time for herself to figure out what would make her happy. I asked her point blank if she was looking for another relationship or someone else. She told me no, that she had no intention of finding someone else. Within 48 hours, she had already started banging with her first lover. I was completely unaware of this at the time. A few weeks later, she began hooking up with his roommate instead. She would go see them during lunch breaks from work and whenever I worked night shifts. At some point, I confronted her because I had a suspicion. She got really defensive and denied everything. I believed her because I had no reason not to trust her. This all happened over the course of her birthday month. For her party, both of the guys were there, and none of them acted like anything was going on. On the night of her birthday, another guy kissed her, and she started a relationship with him as well. All the while, she told me she was still working on her personal issues and thinking about how we could fix our relationship. Another month later, she was seeing two of the guys at the same time, neither of them knowing about the other. I was in another state across the country at her family's reunion. She had really wanted me to be there because she wanted me closer to her family. On the second to last day, we all went shooting, and she asked me to take a picture of her with her phone. As I held up the camera, a message popped up at the top of the screen. I saw the preview. It was the third guy, saying he was so happy to have seen her before she left, and that he was glad they could have some extended time alone since I had left earlier, driving while she flew with her mom. I asked her about it, and she denied anything physical was happening. She said they were just talking, and that she felt bad. After that, I started suspecting the second guy. When I got back home, I called him and asked directly if he was having a relationship with my wife. He told me yes, and then told me about the roommate as well. So, I found out about all three guys. I called my wife and told her we needed to talk immediately. I left work. She left work, and we met at home. She still denied having any other relationships, even when I told her the guys had admitted to it. There are more minor details, but I'll skip them for now. We tried to work it out, but she continued to lie and have similar conversations with other men. After 9 months of trying, I decided I would file for divorce. She never apologized once during that time. Now, it's been over 6 months since the divorce was finalized. She has since apologized and said she regretted every decision she made during that time. Honestly, though, it doesn't really make me feel any better. I knew I could never let it go, so I didn't force myself to trade my self-respect for a lower level of happiness. Currently, I am financially devastated and struggling to get my life started again, while she is perfectly well off. But I feel better in my current situation than I did before. Story 9. Ugh, cheating sucks. I feel like my life should be a Lifetime movie. My husband cheated 8 weeks after I had given birth to our second child. on Mother's Day no less. I didn't find out for 5 months when a second woman emailed him after he had ended things with her. She was upset he had gotten the first woman pregnant. Yes, pregnant. She knew he was married because 2 months earlier, I had accompanied him to her wedding. The whole thing was completely insane. I was a mess. I loved this man, but I was mourning our marriage as if it were a death. Hardcore grief. Later that week, I found out I was pregnant again. Honestly, I don't know how I made it through that time. It all seems like a blur now. He promised to change and love me the way I needed. I was a codependent mess, so I stayed. I began attending a support group, learned about boundaries, and basically got my shit together. 2 years later, he cheated again. I left. I went to a divorce attorney, paid the retainer, and started sleeping with someone else. Looking back, I see that I only slept with him so the pain of my husband's decisions would hurt less. Eventually, I got to a point where I didn't care about him at all. I gave no craps. He cried. I didn't care. He ended up really working on himself in therapy. He found healthier ways to cope. Instead of turning to women and booze, I still hated him. I didn't want anything to do with him. After 7 months, I don't know exactly what happened, but my life wasn't fun anymore. Everything I was chasing felt hollow. I looked at the guy I was sleeping with and realized I didn't want him long term. So, what did I want? After weeks of reflection, I realized I wanted the qualities my husband was developing. I proceeded with caution, and we started talking again. We went to therapy. I told him about the other guy. He went ballistic, but we dealt with it. He took responsibility for everything he had done. We set up boundaries. Neither of us is on Facebook. We don't text people of the opposite sex unless they're family. We don't go out without each other. These may seem extreme, but affairs never start in a single day. They creep in, little by little. We worked too hard to let that happen again. It's been 3 years now, and we even counsel other couples. We're better than we've ever been. We've been together 14 years. Everyone who knows him can't believe the change. He's a different person. I'm glad we went through all that because it brought us closer than we ever could have been otherwise. Story 10. My mom was both a cheater and the other woman for many, many years. As a kid, all right, I was pretty naive. I didn't think much of my mom and stepdad having separate bedrooms. He snored like a fiend and worked late on the computer, and she needed to get up earlier to drive me to school. It just never registered because everything seemed fine between them. They got along well, we were fairly normal, and life seemed okay. Turns out he was a raging corn addict and wouldn't go near her, though I didn't know that growing up. She started spending more time talking to a married guy at work who had 2 kids and a stepdaughter. She even took me to dinner with him one night as a co-worker, and then told me on the drive home that she and my stepdad were getting a divorce. I was 11, and I cried the whole way home. Later, she asked me what I thought of her coworker. Again, nothing clicked for me at the time. Bear with me. I was a kid, and my world was falling apart. We moved out the next morning, and I never saw my stepdad again. We stayed at my grandparents' house for 2 weeks while she looked for a place to live. When she found one in a town I'd never heard of, about half an hour from where we lived my whole life, he was there with his 2 boys. We were moving in together. They spent most of the afternoon and night in their new shared bedroom, leaving the 3 of us on our own to figure out this introductory period. He spent the better part of 15 years promising to divorce his wife, who harassed and stalked my mother, while simultaneously emotionally abusing her, emotionally abusing me, and antagonizing me until I lost my temper, then turning my mother against me to drive a massive wedge between us. I grew up in a house full of enemies. His older son became a drug addict and a dropout and frequently had violent confrontations with his father. I left at 18, while she continued to let them punch holes in her walls, run up her bills, and make a babysitter of herself, all while their bedroom life died and she later found out he was having affairs. He never married her after divorcing his wife, but after their breakup last year, he was married again within about 2 months. He got divorced after 5 months of that marriage. I wasn't surprised. In the end, he drove a massive wedge between my mother and me. Well, maybe that's not entirely fair. She considered him so much more important that during a fight he started between us, she screamed at me that I was ruining her frigging life. That was when I left, and it was almost 6 months before I could deal with her again. Throughout the remainder of their relationship, we had long stretches of not speaking while she drank too much when he was traveling or after they fought. Then she would call me, blaming me or railing on about how horrible a daughter I was for my lack of sympathy. To be honest, I still don't understand how the awesome mom I had before him could become so poisonous and bitter. Now that she's in a healthy relationship, she's a bit more balanced. But I don't forget. Story 11. I had what started as an emotional affair while in a 4-year relationship. I realized my partner was ahead of me in our life plan, but didn't want to admit it. It petrified me. He wanted the house with the picket fence, the dog, kids, marriage, and all that. I was 22, he was 24, and he was much more set up to provide all of that than I was ready to receive. I was in school and casually met someone in the hall who liked the same music as me. Each week, I would wait for him after class, and we'd chat a little. After a few months, I was fully pursuing him. He was 19 at the time. I was hooked. We hung out, and I'd sneak off to spend time with him and his friends. It got to the point where I knew I was in trouble the night I couldn't suppress the urge to kiss him. Up to that point, there had been nothing more physical than hand-holding. A few nights later, I broke it off with my partner. I stayed with my 19-year-old adventure for almost 2 years, while still maintaining minimal contact with my former partner. We had a long history and a lot of mutual friends. I broke it off when it became painfully clear that we were maturing at different speeds, and that I still wanted to be with my partner because I loved him. Of course, the timing was awful. It was 2 days before my mother passed away. But on the day she died, I got back with my partner, and we've been together every day since. We even celebrated our 6-year wedding anniversary a few days ago. In hindsight, I am ashamed of myself for causing a lot of pain, but I don't regret what I did. I needed to sort things out at the time, and I just wasn't ready to grow up. Adventure Boy was the embodiment of my youth, and I loved that about him. I loved him dearly, and he taught me a lot about myself, including who I was truly meant to be with in this lifetime. I am lucky my husband took me back, and I intend to let him know how grateful I am for his love until the day I leave this life. Story 12. We worked for the same company, in the same department, on the same projects. It began with a 3-hour lingering lunch conversation during a business trip and continued for 6 months, 2,000 miles apart. We had marathon daily weekday chat sessions, long email narratives, exchanged explicit pictures, and FedExed inners. There were furtive 2-short phone calls while I sat on park benches on my way home from work, or while I was on vacation with friends. We fell in love with the connection, the empathy that grew out of emotional relevance, the kinship of science, geekdom, and philosophical inquiry. Not to mention the escape from the everyday through virtual fantasy. The insanity of it all was that we never kissed or did anything more, yet we knew each other intimately. We peeled back each other's emotions until there was nothing left but the vulnerable, raw underbelly, which we both loved exposing. Like little kids showing off their cuts and scrapes. We were both married. Me, with a controlling a-hole for 10 years. He never let me listen to music in the car or at home because he hated my taste. He never once cried, even at the sudden death of a co-worker, because he saw tears as a weakness and blamed me whenever I showed them. Eventually, everything came out in the open. Feelings were hurt. Both spouses were steamrolled. I don't think either of them saw it coming. His wife found out about me and threatened to abandon their family if he continued communicating with me. I didn't want to end it, but I told him goodbye. I had already hurt my husband, and I couldn't bear causing further pain to his wife and their 2 kids. The guy I had an affair with changed me. He gave me the strength to stand up to my manipulative husband, rediscover my identity, and acknowledge all the sacrifices I had made in my own life to please someone else at the expense of my own happiness. After I confessed to my husband, he refused to go to marital counseling and wouldn't consider an open relationship. With encouragement from my therapist and friends, I moved out within 2 weeks and finalized my divorce 5 months later. My ex-husband is now living halfway across the world with a girl half his age, and I sincerely hope he's living a more satisfying life. While we were married, we appeared happy on the surface, but it was a front. Inside, we were both miserable and unfulfilled. The affair just turned it inside out. Organized religion never resonated with me, and I never sought it out. Divorce is the only decision I've made in my life that approaches absolute faith. I couldn't stay married after my affair. I fell in love with someone else without proof it existed. No one needs to remind me that blind conviction is impetuous and scientifically irresponsible. I may never find evidence to separate the imaginary from the real, but I am 100% certain of what I felt. Since my divorce, living alone has been a lesson in both monastic spirituality and mischievous morality. People are conditioned to say, "I'm sorry," but I stop them and say, "Don't be." I've lived melodiously and learned meteorically more about myself than I ever dreamed possible. Story 13. Not sure if this is relevant, but I had a relationship with a teacher who was married. Her relationship with her husband was terrible. They married young, and at some point decided having a child was a good reason to stay together, not realizing how much their actions were hurting him. She was a new teacher, shy, nervous, and new to the state. He was military, and they moved around a lot. Not to give away my age, but this was back when cell phones were just taking off, the Razor era, and she had provided her number on the board in case of emergencies. One day, I was going to be late for school and texted her to let her know. Even though I missed all but the last 5 minutes of her class, she didn't count me absent, which was a blessing since I was already missing class for unrelated reasons. I'm not sure what possessed me, but that night I texted her again to thank her. That led to an innocent text conversation that lasted until one of us fell asleep. The texting continued off and on, the same way I talked to any of my friends. She wasn't much older, and the fact that she had a kid never really bothered me. We liked the same movies and books, and one day I asked if she wanted to catch a movie that night. She was skeptical at first, teasing me about being hot for teacher, but eventually agreed to meet me at the theater, sitting in the back. I showed up wearing the same clothes from the day before. She arrived in a cute black summer dress. To keep this from getting graphic, I'll just say that a physical relationship started that night. She was still struggling with her husband, and they hadn't been intimate in some time. He was a military mess and treated both her and their child terribly. I'm not trying to excuse her actions. Only someone who's been in that situation would really understand. But that was her reasoning. It ended shortly after the school year did, having lasted nearly my entire senior year and into the summer. When I left for college, we agreed to end it. During my first year, she divorced her husband after he had a psychotic episode and was admitted. I can honestly say it was one of the best relationships of my life, and I don't carry any guilt or regret about it. It was healthy, and I learned a lot about maturity and relationships that helped me later on. At the same time, it feels like a secret I can't really tell anyone, except Reddit. I've used a throwaway before to share this story, but honestly, I don't feel like I need one anymore. Story 14. I cheated on my now ex-boyfriend of 2 years. Looking back, I didn't really like him all that much, let alone like him. We didn't have anything in common. Honestly, I think the main reason we were together was that he liked the way I looked, and I liked that he lived on his own and had his own car. Super shitty, I know. He had this idea that he could treat me like crap as long as he paid for everything and bought me nice stuff. Being a poor student with a low self-esteem, I let it go on for a while. About 9 months into the relationship, I started hanging out with a former coworker. I'd had a big crush on him when we worked together, but he had been head over heels for a girl who apparently wasn't that into him, not wanting to interfere. I never acted on my feelings and distanced myself, though there was definitely chemistry between us. When we reconnected, we realized we were both dealing with the same issues, feeling unappreciated and emotionally unsatisfied by our partners. Instead of addressing these problems with our significant others, we thought, we should bang. Over the next few months, we had pretty good time, until it became awkward, which at least brought me back to reality. My ex never found out about the affair, and it wasn't the catalyst for me leaving him. I ended up becoming very close with one of my friends from university and realized that simply sleeping with someone wasn't going to be enough or make me happy. I wanted a real, legitimate relationship. I left my ex, and it was a horrible breakup. Apparently, in his mind, showing love meant treating me like crap and then buying me things. I felt guilty throughout the breakup because he took it so badly, completely unaware that I had cheated on him. There were moments when I wanted to tell him, partly so he would leave me alone, but he was already threatening to hurt himself, and I was afraid it might push him over the edge. There was also a shitty part of me that didn't want to tell him because I didn't want him to have that over me. I still see him around occasionally. I have no idea what he's doing with his life now, but I genuinely wish him all the best. After I broke up with my boyfriend, I started hanging out with the friend I had cheated with. He wanted us to be a couple, but I was already interested in my now boyfriend, and as hypocritical as it sounds, how could I ever trust someone I had cheated with? He still contacts me every now and then. At first, he would text borderline inappropriate messages, but I never gave him the response he wanted. I don't think I will ever cheat on my boyfriend. I learned that it's important to work things out with your partner if you truly value the relationship. If you don't, it's better to put each other out of your misery and end it. Story 15. I was in a relationship a while ago. He was jealous, constantly asking where I was, what I was doing, and occasionally accusing me of cheating. No matter how much I reassured him, he always doubted me. I never cheated. One day, he sent me a text saying we needed to talk. I knew immediately what had happened. It turned out he had gotten another girl pregnant. I was insecure and stupid, so I forgave him. That was my mistake. A year later, he left me, claiming he no longer respected me for taking him back. He married her, and I'm now with someone who truly appreciates me. That seems to be a pattern I've noticed. Cheaters often accuse their partners of the same thing they're guilty of, because they don't want to be the only one in the wrong. My stepmother did the same thing to my dad. I've never cheated myself, but I did leave a guy because I started having feelings for someone else. I believed that if I couldn't give him all my love, he shouldn't have to settle for part of it. He deserved better, and I clearly wasn't mature enough to handle a serious relationship at that time. Story 16. My relationship was stalling, and I felt neglected. I should have ended it, but I didn't because I still cared deeply about my boyfriend. The other guy was a very close friend I'd always had a weird, deep, inexplicable connection with, something I'd suppressed because I loved my boyfriend and wanted to be with him, not the other guy. But as my relationship became comfortable and my boyfriend remained inattentive, the other guy became my best friend and confidant, and it became too much to ignore. I know I should have ended things, but I still loved my boyfriend and wasn't thinking about that. At the same time, I felt like I couldn't keep myself away from the other guy, and because he was such a close friend, the distance I'd been trying to impose became impossible. One night, we ended up confessing our love for each other. It wasn't some cheap attraction. I was in love with two people at the same time. The illicit relationship continued for a while, but as I spent more time with the new guy, I realized I loved him. My feelings for my boyfriend were actually deep care, concern, and platonic love, not romantic. I broke up with my boyfriend, but he eventually figured out that I had been unfaithful. I still feel really terrible about it. I genuinely cared for him, but instead of handling the situation openly, I hurt him. In my mind, the relationship with the other guy felt unavoidable, and not telling my boyfriend seemed like the best way to avoid causing him pain. I know that sounds terrible, but at the time, breaking up would have crushed him, and admitting it was for another guy felt even worse. I see now how foolish that was. In the end, the other guy and I had a really intense, amazing relationship for a long time. But we eventually broke up because it felt too serious and we each wanted to do our own thing. He's now getting married. My poor ex is in a happy relationship, or so I hear. We don't speak. And I'm left dealing with complicated relationships that leave me more confused than happy. I guess you could say everyone else seems happy, so maybe this is some form of justice. Story 17. My husband was away for work for 6 months, and during that time, I slept with a few guys, separately. I felt awful. I would wake up every morning physically sick from the guilt, but I didn't stop. A week before he was due to come home, he called me out and told me he knew what had been happening. I was sure he was going to leave me. I braced myself, stopped seeing those guys, and made an appointment with a psychologist to help me understand why I had done something so stupid. When my husband came home, we screamed, we cried, but we decided to work it out. We started seeing the psychologist together for counseling, and it helped. That was 7 years ago. While I doubt I have his full trust even now, he has truly been a wonderful husband. He forgave me and gave me a second chance. I haven't cheated since, and I would never do anything to screw it up again. Story 18. I was in a relationship for a year and 2 months. 6 months in, while my girlfriend was out of town, I ran into my ex-girlfriend at a party. She knew I was in a relationship. She had broken my heart and kind of cheated on me before, but she was insanely attractive. After a few hours of talking and connecting, I went to the bathroom, and she followed me. We kissed, and it felt like fireworks inside me. It was incredible. We ended up meeting 3 nights in a row. We went out, not in the city, because I was afraid someone would see us, and I could tell she felt protected and happy. Eventually, things ended up at my place. She kept hugging me, holding my arm, and repeatedly saying she felt protected with me. Looking back, maybe she had just come out of a bad relationship, or maybe she was just trying to make me feel powerful. When we ended up in bed, I felt too guilty and couldn't really wake it up. It was strange, and she said she felt guilty too. We just slept the rest of the night. After that, we met again and started kissing. She asked me, "Are you only physically attracted to me?" I said, I don't know. Then she asked, "Would you break up with your girlfriend for me?" My ex was slightly chubby, but I liked it. She was busty. I told her, "No chance, not after what you did to me." That's where it ended. I drove her home, and we never met or talked again. It's been about 3 years. I was scared she'd tell my girlfriend, but nothing happened. I still occasionally check her Facebook and see what she's doing. She's still damn good looking. How did it affect my relationship back then? Almost not at all. She didn't find out, though she might have been slightly suspicious. I felt guilty for a while, but it passed because I felt it was only physical. Story 19. I cheated on my boyfriend of 2 years. We had been fighting a lot, and I found out he had been cheating on me with a girl from his university. I was angry, but I forgave him. I never thought I would cheat, but it happened. In my spare time, I do some modeling, nothing serious, just for money. I ended up sleeping with some of the photographers. I convinced myself that since I was using protection and it was just for money, I wouldn't feel bad. I kept seeing different photographers, and the worst was a businessman whose office I was in. I even saw pictures of his wife and kids sitting on his desk. After that, I broke down. The reality hit me. I was a horrible, disgusting person. I kept it a secret from my boyfriend for months. The guilt ate me up every day. I became terribly depressed and even dropped out of school after failing several projects. One night, after too much vodka, I told him everything. He was furious, called me names, yelled exactly what I had feared. But he did not leave me. I promised I would never cheat again. I haven't. And our relationship gets better every day. Do not cheat on your partner. It's not worth it. If things aren't working, break up. Cheating doesn't solve problems. It only makes you feel awful. Story 20. I recently went through an extremely messy breakup that involved me cheating. 6 months ago, I decided to move to another city to focus on my career. There weren't enough opportunities in our city for me to advance. My boyfriend at the time, let's call him Joe, encouraged me to follow my dreams, but he refused to move with me and didn't want to try long distance. We had been living together for 4 years. My heartbreak felt one-sided. He said he was sad about our looming separation, but I never really saw it. We decided to keep living together while I saved money to move. I couldn't afford to find another place and didn't want to move twice in a matter of months, so the arrangement worked. Until it didn't. I discovered he had been doing stuffs with other women on adult websites using his computer. I also found flirty Facebook messages with a girl who had tried to kiss him at a party. I was completely devastated. I couldn't get out of bed for several days. I didn't eat, shower, or brush my teeth. He didn't see what the big deal was, though he felt terrible for causing me so much pain. He had already told his friends we were broken up, but I thought we were still a couple until I moved. We talked things over and decided to devote the last of our time together to each other and make it romantic. Stupid, stupid, stupid. A few weeks later, he went on a trip to visit his family. A coworker invited me to a party and I decided to go. I got drunk. My coworker and I made out. I told Joe about it a week after he got home. I felt awkward at work, so the coworker and I cleared the air, which led to us talking for 3 hours and him trying to kiss me again. But this time, I resisted. I told Joe that pretending to be a couple was a sham and that we should let ourselves be free. I continued dating the coworker and slept with him. Joe found out and didn't take it well. The coworker dumped me, and weeks later, I discovered he had a son he never mentioned to me during the months we were dating. He probably had another woman too. The whole experience left me feeling cheap and dirty. Story 21. I've cheated and been cheated on. In my marriage, my wife left me for about 3 months to live with another man after lying and sleeping with him while on an assignment in another city. We had been drifting for a long time, arguing incessantly, and I had become very jaded with her, unwilling to engage in what she was interested in and preferring to be left alone. She got a job in a big city a couple of hours away that would require her to stay there for a few months. While she was away, being productive and independent, we started to recover a bit. We even began making plans to move to a new city with better opportunities for her career and work together. The last time I saw her before everything went wrong, we were both excited about our plans, and I was genuinely optimistic about what was happening. Then it all changed. She had been getting into online psychics and that kind of nonsense for a while, which I never hid my hatred for. They're scam artists. She took my hatred of psychics as a personal attack on her. The one she got involved with on that stinking cesspool, Ornum, was a prime example. He was constantly Skyping with my wife, and eventually she started feeling emotionally connected to him. He even flew all the way from England to the United States to see her. Over time, he pulled her into a deeply messed up relationship where she believed everyone was against her except him. I don't know if I mentioned this already, but he's a serious scumbag manipulator. Then again, I suppose I did. He makes his money as a psychic. Anywho, she moved into a hotel with him without telling me. I snooped on her Facebook and tracked her location through our phone service, then confronted her. She kind of weaseled her way along and partially admitted things. Her messages with him directly contradicted everything she told me, and I kept pushing. Eventually, she told me she was going to leave me. There was a lot of rationalizing and hedging, but it was pretty much over. She was leaving. I lost my shit. I lost my job. I spent weeks unraveling. I stalked her online, though I never threatened violence or physically confronted her, except once, outside a hotel. And wow, what a screwed up morning that was. Even though I didn't contact them, they weren't even awake, and I didn't know what room they were in. I barely slept for days at a time and wept uncontrollably. I was very depressed. I drank constantly and barely paid my bills, surviving on family help and sparse freelance work. She drifted further and further away. The one time she agreed to see me, she still loved me, she said, but couldn't be with me right then, was a disaster. It ended with me screaming and begging on my knees, barely coherent, choking out, "Please don't, please, please," until the neighbors were so alarmed they checked in on me. She left anyway. I spent 2 months face down, drunk, barely moving except to smoke, drink, or cry. I guess I was still pretty tethered to her. She left the country for a while and fell into a deep depression. I started reaching out to friends, and friends started reaching out to me. I began walking a little just to get some exercise. I started visiting people, even though most of the conversation still revolved around my wife. Little by little, I began to wake up. I started exercising in earnest and lost 25 pounds pretty quickly. I filed for divorce. She didn't want to, but she wouldn't speak to me directly because he wouldn't allow it. I was a poisonous influence on her life, her enemy. By that point, his control over her was nearly complete. She wouldn't even talk to her own mother unless he was present. After a few months, she split with the guy and moved in with her mom. We got in touch over some legal matters and started talking. Eventually, we decided to give it another try. Therapy, lots of conversation, honesty. She has a lot of past and ongoing challenges, including being essayed at a young age and her family's poor response to it. She never used any of that as an excuse in our reconnection. We're still working on things. We had been together for 11 years before everything fell apart, and I was never willing to quit on it. And apparently she isn't either. Things aren't perfect, and I'm not sure that the way I'm approaching this is ideal for anyone, but I'm willing to try. I do love her. I'm also deeply hurt, and our relationship was fundamentally damaged. I don't know where it will go from here, but it's been about 9 months of working on it. Life is weird. Story 22. I cheated on my husband with my 57-year-old boss when I was 23. I was working in a small office with a few other women and my boss. He and I were very close, and I thought of him more like a father figure. We're both outdoorsy, and he started teaching me how to deer hunt, which brought us closer. At the time, I had been married for 3 years and had a toddler. I loved my husband dearly, but I wasn't getting the attention I thought I needed. And I got that from my boss. On our first hunting trip, he had me sit in his lap so he could help me with instructions better. It was awkward, but it felt nice to have someone giving me that attention. Over the next few months, it progressed into a full-blown affair. Kissing, then banging. It was hard to keep it secret, but having someone who said they loved me and treated me like a queen gave me a huge confidence boost. After about 5 months, I started feeling guilty and worried I couldn't keep it a secret much longer. So I decided to break things off. My boss, who was also married to his high school sweetheart with 2 grown kids, was too far into the relationship to want to stop. When I broke it off, he sent me a nasty text saying he regretted ever being with me and regretted helping me further my career. He also said I didn't earn any of the extra privileges I gained at work. The text devastated me. It was cruel, and I was hurting so much that I made the mistake of telling my husband I was quitting. When he asked why, I said my boss had been making passes at me. That set off a fiery snowball. I ended up lying, saying he and I had a moment at work. I told my husband I didn't want it, but I didn't explicitly say no. My husband went to a friend who was basically an HR rep, and things started going downhill fast. We filed a report with HR, and when I got home, I texted my boss and told him to resign or retire. I didn't want to go through what was about to happen. I warned him it wasn't going to be good and told him to just resign. About 20 minutes after I sent the text, my father-in-law, who is the chief of the volunteer fire department, came over to tell me my husband had been called out on an emergency shooting. He then told me the call was at my boss's house and that my boss had offed himself. He did a damn good job of making it look like a gun cleaning accident, but I knew better. Everyone at work was devastated. I fell into a deep depression, as did his wife of 30-some-odd years, and his kids too. The HR rep dropped the report, and it was never spoken of again. It's almost 2 years later now. I'm living in another city and still married. I think about my boss almost daily, and it kills me inside to think that I'm what caused his death. It might as well have been my finger pulling the trigger. I'm ashamed. I carry a huge cloud of guilt over my head. I don't know what else to say about it, but there's my long story. Moral of the story: don't sleep with your boss or fall in love with him. Story 23. I never thought I would cheat, but then I did. I don't think it's as simple as once a cheater, always a cheater. For some, maybe, but I disagree. For For me, it was a dead bedroom situation. After a decade of living in separate bedrooms, the intimacy was just gone. I'd thought about divorce, and my mistake was not leaving before I fell in love with a coworker. She was quite a bit younger, which scared her at first, until she realized she felt the same way. I separated and am currently going through the divorce process. I fell for someone in a way I don't think I ever had before, not even with my wife. Unfortunately, the age difference and the divorce were too much for her. Her dreams were to move out west, and I knew that before we became involved. So, she did, and I wasn't part of that new life. She faded away, called it quits, and went no contact. I still think she was the right woman. It was just bad timing. Now, I don't know if she will ever contact me again. I had my first date post-breakup last weekend. It turns out she has nearly the exact same story I did. She even slightly beat me on the age difference, which I didn't think was possible. Unfortunately, that looks like a dead end now. Our date stirred up enough emotions that she's seeing him again today. My mistake was not ending my marriage earlier or fighting harder to fix what was broken. I've learned that you need to keep investing in your relationship. Tell them you love them every day and show it. Once one side stops trying and you just start living day to day, you're on a slippery slope to failure. With my marriage, I also realized I wasn't with the right person for me. Story 24, I don't understand people who cheat repeatedly. If you want to be with someone else besides your significant other, there are problems in your relationship that need to be addressed. If you can't fix them, then leave. If you can't leave, you need to ask yourself some serious questions about why you're here. You get one shot at life, so why waste a single minute being with someone you don't want to be with, making both yourself and them unhappy? The longer you stay, the longer you prolong each other's unhappiness. If you just bite the bullet, be honest, and go through with a breakup, you can move on freely. And there's much less heartbreak for everyone involved. It's simple. Be honest, and things work out in the long run. Everyone is happier for it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.